tolerance range. So we're just logging that through the histogram right now, and then we'll make our fuel trim AFR adjustments and bring this baby back in line. Hey guys, Dan the Mustang Doctor. We're just working on dialing in this Silverado. It's an 06 Silverado. It runs off of MAF and MAP. So right now we've got the volumetric efficiency tables turned off, and we're just dialing in the MAF right now. The friend of mine has an emissions issue. He's trying to pass inspection, so the fuel trims are just out of tolerance. So this is a LS cammed engine, so it's been he's rebuilt the engine and it's pretty much ready to go, but it needs to be dialed in now because the fuel trims are just out of range. So basically what we're doing is just dialing in the air to fuel, and to do that we're using a histogram, and right now we're just letting it run, and as you guys can see, we're trying to get these all within a tolerance that we're comfortable with of plus or minus 5%. And as you guys can see, in the upper range we're still off quite a bit, by 11-12%, but we're getting a lot closer on the bottom range. So to do this, we do a step test, or a step hit, where we'll hold idle at a certain range to get the different MAF hertz that we need to log, and we want to hold that at a step range because I'll show you. We want to hold it at a step range there. You can kind of hear that's a little lean. We want to hold it at that step range because we want to log enough average MAF counts so that we can get some accurate data. And another thing we had to do was we had to turn off the long-term fuel trims, which is the adaptive learning. All right, so we just made the fuel trim adjustments under the MAF, and the other thing that we had to shut off was decel fuel cutoff. We're not into that yet, because we're not driving. We're just doing some neutral idle fuel trim tuning. Once we get this dialed in more here at idle and under step rev, we'll go under some load and we'll drive around. And for that we need decel fuel cutoff turned off, because basically what that's going to do is, as it builds the histogram, it's going to, so let's start with what decel fuel cutoff is. Basically, what it is as you're driving down the road and you let off the gas, it cuts fuel because you don't need it. So it's a fuel saving option that GM's built right into the PCM on these vehicles. And basically, the reason why we don't want it on is because we're going to be logging the short-term fuel trims under open loop fueling. And when it goes into decel fuel cutoff, it's going to show us an AFR of 20, which is extremely lean, and we know we're not that lean. But it's going to throw off all of our averages in the histogram. So we've got to have that turned off. And of course, since we're dialing in MAF, as I had mentioned earlier, we also forced the MAP volumetric efficiency tables off. So we're only running off MAF. And basically the way this works is these, not every vehicle runs off of a MAF and a MAP. Some run off both, some run off just a MAF, or some run off just a MAP sensor. And basically this truck runs off of both. So it uses the MAF to really keep things nice and smooth. But under some of the transient changes as you're driving down the road, it will substitute the VE tables, or volumetric efficiency tables, which are going to keep your fuel just nice and clean as you're driving down the road. So it really compensates for the MAF. So as you guys can see, these are getting much closer. We're well within our 5% plus or minus tolerance. We're almost dead on. As we're getting more counts, it's going to change a little bit here. We'll do a couple more step tests. Really curious to see where we are in the 4,000 range. We were quite a bit off on the last revision. So if we can get the upper step range a little bit more in line, we'll go out and do some load data logging, and we'll dial it in there. And then once we get the transient driving underway, we'll switch to some wide open throttle tuning, and then we'll get this baby on the dyno and see where we're at. doing our 2000 RPM step test, and as you guys can see, we're quite a bit closer now. You can remember before we were about 11%, 12% off in that range, so we're getting a lot closer. I think it's definitely time for us to do some transient load data logging. So we had this light right when I started it up, it was flashing. We had it off as we accelerated a little bit. Now it's on, flashing again. I think that's our original issue. I think it's probably a lean, it could be a lean or a rich condition at this point. So we'll check and see what it is, and then we'll dial this, continue to dial this in. It's quite a bit off as we get a little bit higher here. If you're looking right there, we're way off. So, but that's just as we were climbing. We hadn't done a step test that far yet, so we'll dial it in and go from there. Just gonna read that DTC and see what that engine light was. AC refrigerant pressure sensor, not what I expected. So you can see our emissions issues are still, we haven't reset those monitors yet, so those are still incomplete. But that's not surprising. You got to put some miles on this once we dial it in anyways. Okay guys, so we've done some transient driving under load, and the dial in on it's becoming a little bit harder than I expected, but we're getting close. So jump over to the you can see we're getting pretty close under just a little load here, just a little cruise. It's definitely dialing in better. These will average out, of course, as we get going, but we're pretty good under light load at this point. Yeah, we're getting a lot closer under harder load, as you guys can see. So we're going to continue to dial this in under transient load. Actually, I think we're pretty much there. So I think we're going to turn back on the VE tables and take this for a drive and see if it's smooth. Ensure that there's no blips. We had a couple blips earlier, and I believe that's just due to having the VE tables turned off, because as I shared earlier in the video, the VE table in conjunction with the MAF is really there to kind of clean up transient driving. So we'll turn that back on and see how things feel. Okay guys, so we've done some more transient load data logging. I'm just kind of flipping through the MAF curve here. You guys can see the histogram has run some averages basically on these fuel trims, and we're pretty close down low. As you can see, we're within 5% up plus or minus for the most part. There's a couple that are just a hair off. But then we get quite a bit out of range as we get further and further up, and we haven't made any revisions here yet. So what we're doing is we're dialing this in increments. So now that we've gotten into the higher MAF section, this will be the first time we've logged those parameters. That's why they're that far off, and you can see the other ones are a lot closer. Essentially what we do here, and I want to show you guys, is we're going to grab all of this data. We're going to copy it over from the data logging software, and then we're going to jump over to the tune, and we're going to paste special and multiply by 0.5%, or multiply the percentage by half, and that's going to drop those values in here. So now we've data logged, we've run it through the histogram. Now we have our new data basically that we need to load into the tune itself to tell the computer, hey, this is what we have now for airflow with the current setup, these cams, intake, everything else. So now that we've got these parameters in here, there's one thing that you always want to check, and that's the graph, because sometimes the data is just a little spotty and can be a little bit off. And as you guys can see, I'm opening this up, we've got some jumps here and there, so we want to smooth that out. So essentially what we're going to do, we've already selected it all, and we're just going to smooth it. We're going to smooth the data, and you guys can see this kind of fall in line as we smooth it. You don't want to smooth it too much, but you want a nice smooth curve. Because by smoothing it, you're essentially moving, adjusting the numbers that we put in. And obviously we got that data live from the vehicle as we were driving it, so we know that it's fairly accurate. We don't want to smooth too much to change our data from what we had, but we don't want it to be choppy either, because you're going to get a choppy driving experience as well. So smooth that out, and we'll flash this tune back on. We'll go out and make another data log, and we'll go from there. So now that we smoothed the MAF curve out, guys, it's quite a bit closer, and it feels really good to drive. It's quite smooth. So even the top, the upper range is much closer. We haven't gotten into heavier load at all yet, but it's looking pretty good. Okay guys, so we've got the MAF curve dialed in. It's nice and smooth. Truck drives great. We did some watt pulls and dialed in the fueling upstairs, and ready to go. So we've re-enabled decel fuel cutoff. We have cleaned up the tune really so that it's ready to go and pass emissions testing, and no more engine lights. The truck is running really good. So essentially now it just has to be driven a little bit to reset the O2 sensor monitors. One of the things we did have to do though is, since this friend of mine put in 373 gears from 342s, is we had to go into the edit section and adjust the gear ratio. So in there before were 342s, we updated those to 373s, and just checking the speed now. So all right guys, that's pretty much it. So have a great day.